Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Monday. It's March 18th, and this is our chart lesson for today. And I had a nice little extended vacation, so it was nice to come back, rested and ready to go. I It wasn't really a lot of trades today. There was actually one or two that were pretty good that you could have caught a nice runner, but for the most part, there's not a lot of trades today. There's not a lot of price action really. Um, This really looks like a range day. It was mostly up, and then we had a nice correction back down to about 70%, 75% of the move up, and then we traded back up. So we really got two legs up. If you measure this first, I haven't even measured them, but I got a feeling they're pretty close to measured move. You can see, well, we're actually, this was today. We didn't quite get there, but we're into the next day, and we've almost got a perfect measured move. So it's basically a two-legged move. It's mostly, really for all intents and purposes, the trades were between the highs and the overnight lows. This is not the overnight highs. This is the high for the day. So that makes it a little bit different. Generally, your range days will be between your overnight high and overnight low, which is not very much today. But this is still a range type day with an upward bias. That's the way I would call it. If you caught this move right here, this was a really nice move, and wouldn't have been that. Notice that you got a break of your two-tiered channel. Either way you looked at it, you had the lighter channel working up. You got a break. It's a two-legged correction. You move to a new high, and then it sold off. Or even if you found the flatter, darker channel, you got a break of it, move to a new high, and we got a new high by a tick, and then it sold off. So you really come to the same conclusion no matter how you saw this. But I'm going to back out a little bit. We'll talk about the trades. Like I said, it won't take long today. Not many trades. So let's talk about the trades here. First trade I saw, actually 7 o'clock hour came during this little move down here, and there's a entry right here at the key entry point, but you may not have had this key entry point. This was a little bit hard to find this early in the morning. However, it's a double test. Notice that you got this low. You tested it once. I don't have a line across there. Let me put that across there. You can see that support area across there. And you pull back here. You tested it once. You tested it twice. And there's really two legs down here. You can see there's a move down, a correction, another move down. And so there's a couple different ways to look at that. But if you found that key entry point, that would make this a nice entry regardless. So, and it's not a perfect setup, so I did mark it green, but I kind of like that one just based off the double test. And this is looking like a little bit like we're sideways here. And we run up, we pull back, and now you got a failed second entry short. Notice that you got a swing low there. So this one's lower. So you got a new low. You got a first entry, and then a second entry, and you got a higher low. And you got a fairly nice little signal bar right there. It closes on its high. I like taking that one. And you probably would have had a runner on that one, so you could have ridden this up. But notice you come back again here. Notice that little gap right there. I don't talk about this much, but basically those are like a swing point. So you could look at that like, I mean, basically you could look at this as a new low right here. This is a double bottom. So first entry, and there's actually a second entry right there. But it's like a single tick, and we're still moving up. So you could even look at that as a failed second entry short, but I kind of looked at that as a double bottom right there with that gap, and then first entry, second entry. So there's a couple different ways. Again, I just marked it green. It's a breakout pullback. Notice there's a bunch of support across there, and this is a breakout pullback short, and then of course you got this one. It's not a very good signal bar, but there's basically two. Notice that no matter how you look at this, notice there's one leg up, a little correction, and a second leg up. That's basically two legs up. So on a bigger picture, that's a failed second entry short. and then it tries to go lower again and makes another bounce right off that key entry point. So that's why I mark those. They're just basically off the key entry point. They're not great setups, but they are a key entry point, and there's some different reasons to kind of like those. But I just marked them. I marked them green, so because I figured people would ask about them. So um, anyway, you do get a close outside here, even if this is valid or not, um, and then you get a couple of legs up to a new high. Notice how you make that high right there, and you try to go higher once, try to go higher twice. It's a failed second entry long. You're a good bit away from the EMA. Nice bearish bar. There's strong resistance up there. I like going short just to try to ride that back to the EMA. But if this darker blue trend channel is in play, we're probably headed all the way back down to here, which is exactly where we go. We actually get a little overshoot right here, or a break of it. And then we get a higher low right here. Actually, I missed this trade right here. Notice that this one's a little risky. It's a little aggressive, but it's a failed second entry long, and you're a long way away from the EMA, so that's why I marked. And then if you take that, a lot of times those will be important highs, or if it's on the other end, it'll be important low of the day. And you catch some big moves. In this case, you really didn't because it comes back again, but still you would have had a nice move out of that. Then it comes up first entry, and then there's a second entry, and that's coming back to test that midline, and that's a second entry short and a failed second entry long all at the same time. Notice that new low, first entry, second entry when it broke below that. Because it's a fairly bearish bar, it's not perfect, but it's also a failed second entry long, so that that makes it a little more. Doesn't really matter what the signal bar looks like in that case, and you're just looking for it to run back down and touch and test the trend line, and hopefully maybe get a bounce. And it does get a break. That one's tempting. You don't quite have. Let me just measure it real quick. There's your first leg, and then your second leg would be down here. And you don't have, you see, you don't quite have a measured move, but you got the trend line there, so you would expect you may not get a measured move. So you might even try to go long right there if you're wanting to be aggressive, just like I talked about up here. You could argue for that to be green. But generally, you want to wait on a higher low just to prove that you got a reversal, and to give you a little more evidence that hey, we're not making lower highs and lower lows now. Suddenly, we're making a lower or a higher low right there, since we're going higher. And somebody asked me about that today, and I tried to explain that to them. You want a little bit of evidence that the market is reversing. This is just a correction in an uptrend. We actually get a break, so it's a little more than a correction, but it's still considered a correction. Now we're going to probably shoot for a new high, and so you want to try to catch that, and we do. We go up and make a new high by 1 point, by 1 tick rather. You do get a lower high here. That one is very tempting. You might even argue for that to be at least green. I didn't mark it, but if you want to be aggressive, that's a lower high. When you've already had a break and new high, it's just a little dangerous because that's not a real convincing close outside the trend line, and we could push you up for a second leg up. But when it makes a failed second entry long right there, it actually went higher and turns and goes out the other side. You probably got people trapped there. I like entering there. You don't know that it's going to do this. You figure that it's going to at least come back down here and test these lows again, but the bottom just falls out of this thing. And if you catch that one trade there, that's the trade of the day, actually. And then we bounce. And again, it's tempting here to try to catch a low. But notice if you'd tried that right here, you'd have got burned by one tick, although you really didn't have a close outside a new low yet. Now you got a close outside a new low, but you might get another leg down. So it's always dangerous. You're better off to wait on a higher low, which comes here, but now you're right back to the EMA on the other side, not much room, and you don't know you're going to get a break there. So I think you're better off to sit tight. Again, that's one you might argue for green, but you could get burned just like you would. If you'd have tried to guess right there, you'd have got burned, and that's the danger of it. But when you do catch one, A lot of times they're major low or high of the day. So, and then you just went in this sideways stuff, and it's just you're better off just to stay out of this. You got a little trend working up, and you would expect we may try to make a new high there. We don't. We're just kind of going sideways, and we get stuck in this little trading range. I don't see any entries. This one is really tempting, but it's not very high to this high or that high. And you see you would have got burned. And then this one is tempting, but now it's right back into these highs. So you're just better off to stay out of that. I would have been looking for a possible move down here. So it was a little surprising when it bounced, but that's what happens sometimes. The price action, you don't always get a break in a new low. It's just the way it works sometimes. So that bar is just way too big anyway. There's too much sideways action, so you would have had to wait on this bar. And so going short right there, right into that last swing on a bar that big is really dangerous. But it would have given you multiple times opportunities to try to get out of it, even if you did take it. But past that, I wouldn't even think about entering there. And I think that one's too dangerous right there. Too big a bar, too much overlap right there. This one does bounce, even though it works. Though you did the right thing if you didn't go long there. So you don't want to be going long right here, even though this looks like a really good trade because it's right into these highs. This time it works, but next time it may not. So notice it runs up and it tries to go short once, twice, and so now you may get another leg up. I like going long right there. Only that's not a great signal bar. It's really kind of a doji, and that's a little bit of overlap. It's not a great entry either. It's really a kind of a smaller version of this down here. You could almost argue for this to be green, and there's just a lot of overlap right there. But you do get this lower bar. You don't quite have enough room to get out, but if you wanted to risk that one, it's all above that midline. It bounces right off the EMA, just kind of what you expect before you get the second leg up. Then you run up. Notice you get a first entry and then the second entry right there. And then you get a higher low. I'm still not convinced on any of these until you get that failed second entry short right there. Look, notice that low. You get a first entry, second entry, and that's a trap. And now you can, and when it turns and goes out the other side, I like going long. And that takes you into the 2 o'clock hour. There's another nice setup here. It's a little bit too late, but notice it bounces right off that trend line. And the first entry, second entry, a lot of overlap right there. But that trend line's holding. That's a failed second entry long. I'd deal trading. So anyway, not a lot of trades today. I'm not going to beat around the bush. I've been gone for a few days, so I'm still trying to catch up with email and all. And so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this chart lesson today. It's just wasn't a very good trading day. There's only 1, 2, 3, 4 blue. There's still 6 good trades there, which you only need 2 or 3, but you had to be really patient. There's a bunch of green ones in here. And like I said, some of those are even iffy. But I know people will ask about them, so I marked them and we'll talk about them and make them. I made them a little bit, I'd made them green because they are a little bit aggressive. So anyway, I hope you had a good weekend. I did. Glad to be back. I'm a little bit behind on my email. I'll try to catch up today before I leave. But anyway, we'll be back again to do it tomorrow. Hopefully tomorrow we'll get a little more movement than today. But I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com. And we'll see you next time.